welcome everyone to Excel Still More. We're here tonight. I'm with John Pontier. My name is Greg Harris. And tonight we're going to be looking at the subject of hospitality. One of our essential reforms of Household of Faith is the being dedicated and devoted to hospitality. And so, John, you've been pastoring now for, 14 years?
Actually, I think it's more like 15, but that's close enough.
Okay, 15 years. And this reform has been a big part, I know, not only of your church life, but also of your own personal family life. And so,
Yes, it has.
how do you see this particular reform changing the culture, affecting the culture of the church?
Well, like you said, our family kind of pattern was fit pretty well into the reform of being hospitable and opening up your home. We lived in Israel for a while, and were taught, actually, some of my hospitable training was developed in the land of Israel, because the Israelis were so gracious to open their homes to us as foreigners, and we learned just little tricks of the trade that just made you feel very welcome. For example, in Israel, you end up having lots of, I'll just say finger food, the American version of finger food. And it always comes out, no matter what the occasion, there's always a multitude of food and things to drink, soda pop or water or whatever. And you just always made to feel welcome.
Good.
And we kind of absorbed some of those behaviors into our own.
Just to set the context, what took you to Israel, so that people understand the social environment?
Why was I wandering around?
Why would you be there? Yeah.
I worked for a large electronics company that needed to build a manufacturing facility in the southern part of Israel.
Okay.
And so, the Lord worked my job assignments out in such a way that the opportunity afforded itself, and I had been blessed to go over there on another business trip, and I just fell in love with the land.
Right. So you're interacting with people that are not so much part of the Christian church community, but they're just the Jewish people,
our Jewish neighbors,
and the culture of hospitality that's there in Israel today.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah.
We saw it repeated. It was a very consistent cultural facet. No matter what household we went in, I didn't care if it was in the southern part of the country, northern part of the country, Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, same thing.
Now, there's so much more to hospitality than mealtime, although mealtime is probably the first step most people take toward making their home open. We talk about being an embassy of the kingdom of God, and mealtime is an excellent time to allow people to come in and literally taste and see that the Lord is good. But what are some other areas? I know your family, and so I know there are answers to this question. What other ways in which you as a family have practiced hospitality?
Well, again, this is our example. It's not that, everybody's, but the Lord has brought across our paths Israelis, Target, Fred Meyer, or whatever, they're speaking to their kids in Hebrew, and we acquired some level of language skill when we were there, and so we would, just go and say hi in Hebrew. Ma shalomcha, and they'd look at you like, wait a minute, this is America, what are you talking to me in Hebrew for? And the Lord would allow us to meet these folks, and we invite them over to our home. And like you said, open our home to people that probably wouldn't have that experience if we weren't willing.
Right. Now, you have a barn.
I do.
You have
multiple
a farm here, and what kind of events do you host here as in your embassy?
Well, our embassy, and by the way, if you do open your home to hosting, you need to keep in mind that it could become an annual event.
Right.
Example. Right. We have a large barn, and we have, to be honest with you, I can't remember how long it's been. It could be almost as many as the 15 years, if not much less. We have a Reformation party. or trying to, on October 31st, have an opportunity to gather families together to learn about a reformer. And so we have, I guess you'd call it like, what was it, like a carnival where families set up booths, and there's candy for prizes, and it's some kind of a relationship to the reformer.
Right.
And you get the pattern right.
You do that usually around the season when other people are doing Halloween.
Yes.
And is an alternative to Halloween. It's a Reformation party, which happens to be the
same night.
Anniversary of when Martin Luther nailed the 95 Theses to the Wittenberg door.
That's right. In fact, this year we're going to have Martin Luther be the reformer that's going to be studied. And we also use it as an opportunity for like the young men or young women. We've had both over the years. Do a 10, 15 minute, kind of presentation or whatever to the group. We stop, okay, everybody's going, and they give their, and some people get pretty creative. We even had someone do a rap kind of thing between a father and son dressed up as monks. So you can get pretty creative.
That's great.
Great. It was fun.
Now, another dimension of hospitality is guest room hospitality. So how has that worked into your routine? Well,
over the years, opportunities afford themselves, like with the fellowship, for example. We have a retreat and we open our home for them to stay with us. We've had people live with us for a couple years. Going to school, the local community college down here has a well-known program, trade-oriented program. And, the Lord, it's not like to be honest with you, I don't go out looking.
Yeah.
It just, the Lord seems to bring these opportunities to us.
And then right now your mother is...
Yep, we added on to the house. And for my parents, both mom and dad, about probably 10 years ago now.
Right.
And my dad just passed away in April, and my mom's still here. And I tell my kids, and in fact, I remember you saying, you want to be a lovable little old man or a lovable little old woman.
Right.
You don't want to be a cranky little old man or a cranky little old woman.
Be somebody that people enjoy having in their home.
So I'm going to try to do that personally.
Yeah.
And my mom is that way.
Yeah.
But so that's another use that the Lord's allowed us to put our home to.
That's great. Well, the design and the architecture of a modern home doesn't often reflect all of these different aspects and functions of hospitality. A little bit is coming back now because of the Airbnb movement, where people are starting to think of their spare bedrooms as a place where people could come and spend the night. And of course, that's usually motivated by profit. But in the past, the Christian community has made it a part of their home design to have a room that can be used in multiple ways. If you were to step into a home that was built around the 1890s or before, and then right on up into maybe the 1920s and 30s, you would find a floor plan that would be very consistent, and it actually is a cradle-to-grave design for the home, to be a place for birth to take place. There's always a bedroom near the kitchen, and that bedroom was often the guest room when guests would come, but it was also the sick room when someone needed to be nursed back to health. It was the birthing room when somebody was having a baby, both the young couple at the beginning of life and also for the children as they would get married and they'd have their children at grandma's house, and grandma would be there to play the part of a midwife and so on. And then you also had that same room would often be used as a hospice care. We often don't think of the hospital as being a place to go and die, but originally it was in that category, and people were hesitant to go there because often you didn't come home from the hospital because it was the hospice as well. And when you look at the design of a home, it would often have an archway into a very small room. They would often call that the parlor, right?
Yeah.
And there were no doors on the archway. And there would often be a couch there or a settee where young couples could spark, in court and all the rest. But when someone would pass away, that's where the casket would go. It would be in the funeral parlor.
Yeah.
And the large dining room area would be the seating area for the people there mourning and participating in the funeral or the wedding. That was the same archway could be a context for the wedding couple to be married in. And so then you often notice on older homes as well that the front door would be just extra wide. And you think, why is the door so wide? That's because they had to carry a casket out once in a while, and that's what. So the architecture reflected the life from cradle to grave of a typical family, and they didn't outsource all of these functions, these special times in life, to agencies and government and or businesses, industries. Whereas today we have to fight against that. A young couple can go deeply into debt because they had nowhere to have their wedding without having to pay huge amounts of money for the venue. Mm-hmm. Now, it's my understanding that
we've had a lot of weddings at this place.
Yeah,
exactly. And it has been a blessing for
yeah.
my own children. 3 of our 4 have
Yeah.
married, and other young people at church. And we even had a young woman just drive up one day and say, I'd love to get married in your barn. I'm like, you sure about that? Have you seen the inside of my barn? But she was persistent, and so a lot of elbow grease.
Now you've turned that barn into a venue. You can have a big barn dance there, I understand.
Well, we can. It's not an official venue, but we use it.
Yeah, what I mean is, you are a wonderful example of someone who's allowed the facilities on this farm property to be utilized in all kinds of creative ways. And usually in ways that include people, that allow people to get the benefit. Yeah. And I think that's when we talk about being devoted to hospitality, not everybody owns a farm. Some folks just live in a nice little apartment or flat and don't have a lot of space. But every home, every Christian home can function as a place to practice hospitality. And I think I would go so far as to say that if you are ever homeless, God forbid, but it does happen to folks, your campfire can be a place to practice hospitality. It's an attitude, not a building that goes into it. And so, when you look at the pastoral care of the church, have you noticed anything about the effects of hospitality on new members, for instance, and how they relate to the church?
I've seen, and in fact, you really hear the feedback from people about how welcome they feel when they come, and they're invited either over for a meal or we also have something called productive fellowship, but we'll get to that at a different point in our conversations. But the community that it builds when you have homes that open in both directions, and again, the Pontier version is we do some of the festivals, right? So we'd like during Sukkot, we put up a sukkah, right?
Right.
We invite unbelieving Jewish friends over, and we invite believing Christian friends over to share a meal and celebrate, God's provision, etc. And so it provides. It's really quite helpful when you've got several unbelieving people, guests, and you have several believing guests.
Yes.
Because then it's not like I've got to make sure I talk to all these, because like the Lord works it through all the people there.
Yeah, the unbelieving members of the group get to overhear conversation between believers. And then there's also the opportunity for the believers to overhear the conversation of the unbelievers, and then they begin to interact with one another. And you see a lot of, whether it's pre-evangelism or whether it's actual evangelism, happening as folks begin to see This is a household that is loving for a purpose. They're very open and generous, but it's for a purpose. They're representing someone who has called us, and as Paul tells us, elders are to be given to hospitality. Practice hospitality. Have you noticed how that sentence ends? Practice hospitality without complaint.
That's hard to do sometimes.
Exactly.
That's hard to do sometimes.
We'd like everybody to please turn off your cell phones.
Yeah.
All right. I'll turn that to silent.
That'll work.
Now, when we think of hospitality here in the West, we have our hotel industry, right?
Yes, we do.
To house us when we're traveling now. That hasn't always been the case. People expected to stay with relatives or friends as they travel.
Yeah.
We have restaurants to feed us when we're traveling, and so we don't expect to have meals, with people. And so, in a lot of ways, we have allowed some of the primary functions of the household, the family household, to be outsourced to business interests. And initially, those business interests worked really hard to have higher quality at lower prices. Okay, but as the culture has become accustomed to taking your friends out rather than having them over and eating a meal together at home, the prices have risen if you're going to go to a decent meal, and the quality has dropped. So it's like the farther away we've gotten from the old paths where the good way is, the quality has been eroding and the prices have been rising. And it's important, I think, for the church to lead the culture back to a place where the home is a place where we get to put on display what we honestly believe to be the truth. It is a wonderful instrument. It's not an obstacle to our ministries to have a family life. It's a vehicle for our ministry. And as you've demonstrated, you and Barbara, your home is a really powerful tool in doing that. So I read a sociological study when I was at the University of Dayton way back a long, long time ago. And I've tried to find it. I know it's probably buried in some old textbook that they never use anymore. Mm-hmm. But I do remember the findings. And it was the concept that people have two kinds of relationships. We have a primary relationship and we have a secondary relationship. And all the people in the secondary relationship are what you would call single context friendships, acquaintances. We would even refer to those people as acquaintances. And if you only see somebody in that one social context, even if you see them 5 days a week at work and you feel like you really are friends at work, you're still a secondary relationship. And you probably would not call that person during a time of need because you'd feel like you'd be imposing on somebody they're not in that kind of relationship with you. But whenever you have the same relationship in two or more social contexts that are unrelated to one another, that's important. Going to the company picnic doesn't break you out of it being a friendship at work. But if you see that same person maybe on a bowling league, or you see them at the Little League baseball and you sit beside them in the bleachers and start to talk, or if you see them in charity work or some fraternal organization like that, then they move you and you move them out of the category of a secondary relationship into a primary relationship. And as soon as that happens, you feel not only comfortable sharing with them what's going on in your life and where the pain is and where you're struggling, you feel obligated to share that. And even to the point where if you had a crisis in the middle of the night and you didn't call them, you would be afraid that they'd be mad at you when they found out.
Yeah.
You see the difference?
Yeah.
Now, Think about what the implications, if that's true. This is a secular sociological study. But if that's true, every time we practice hospitality towards somebody, regardless of where else we see them, we add the second context. And they'll begin to share with us what's really going on in their marriage, or what's going on with their kids, or what's going on with their health, their financial situation. They begin to be more transparent because they feel like that's what friends do. You become a friend rather than just an acquaintance when there's more than one social context in which you see them routinely. So I think that's why God tells us in His Word that we are to practice hospitality. That we, especially elders, should be given to hospitality, because it turns every relationship into an opportunity to pray with people, to counsel people, to evangelize people, and they won't feel offended by that because they see us as somebody who has their interests at heart. Yeah.
They know us.
They know us. Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting.
So I hope our viewers will ponder this.
Yes.
And consider, how could your home become a more effective embassy of God's kingdom by simply getting into a routine, a calendar, if you will, of celebrating the holidays as a ministry, of inviting people over on an annual basis as a way of making the kingdom of God and the gospel more accessible.
May it be so. And once again, thank you for joining us. I look forward to further conversations, and may God bless you.
God bless you. Thanks for being with us.
Okay. We'll end this one.